Hi, my name's Irrelevant, and today on the show, a 2006-2007 era gaming machine featuring the AMD FX-60. But not only that, an ATi X1900 XT. Do you remember OCZ Ram? And did you know Foxconn made motherboards? (2006-2007) was kind of a golden era for gaming. It's when the games that started getting real good started getting better, and there was a lot of good releases around that time. And if you wanted to play those games at their absolute best, you wanted an FX-60 socket 939 processor. At the time, it was the best and fastest gaming processor you could get until later that year in summer 2006 when Intel dropped their Core 2 Duo series, dethroning AMD for the next 14 years. In ways, you could say this processor is pretty special. It was the last best processor AMD ever made. They've recently made a comeback, but you know, they're toe-to-toe with Intel right now, and the jury's still out whether it's considered the best. As you can see by the smoothness and the general lack of features on this, this is one of my first forays into CPU lapping. I didn't go all the way down to the bare copper, it wasn't necessary. I just wanted to smooth it out real nice to make a good contact. Now, before AMD purchased ATi was still regarded as being one of the best video card manufacturers. And the X1900 XT was kind of like the 3080 at the time. It was very expensive and in very high demand, and I'm one of the few idiots who bought it the day it came out. This thing cost almost $1,000 on its time of release, at least here in Canada, probably $499 US. Back in this era, ATi and NVIDIA, the fastest card was determined by who released the latest card. It would be ATi, NVIDIA, ATi, NVIDIA, ATi, NVIDIA. NVIDIA was starting to make a comeback because in the early 2000s, they weren't considered that good. I had a pair of 6600 GTs in the system that I had before the FX-60, the 4400 Plus. I don't have that system to demonstrate you, so I'm skipping a couple of years and a couple builds here. But I replaced those 6600 GTs with the X1900 XT because it was supposed to be absolutely fire. But then, much in the same way, this was also one of the last good cards ATi would release. If you were an enthusiast gamer, you probably had some OCZ Ram. This stuff is PC3200, aka DDR400 in CL2325 latency. This is about when high-end enthusiast RAM really started becoming a thing, and people really started making a fuss about it. Standard DDR300 RAM would be CL3, and so to get to CL2 RAM, that was awesome. We're getting used to being able to overclock our RAM a bit on our Ryzen systems, but back in those days, AMD's memory control is pretty much what you see was what you got. If it was rated for 3200, you were getting 3200. So if you wanted to squeeze more performance out of your AMD, you had to have higher latency RAM. In fact, that's one of the things that pushed market into the high latency, high performance RAM. The fact that whereas people would normally want to overclock the RAM's megahertz, you couldn't really do that on AMD. So the answer was to overclock the latency. And so we started seeing kits like this. And this was one of the best kits you could get for the AMD platform back then. This right here is but 2 gigs. If you had 2 gigs, you pretty much had Windows XP maxed out, and you had more than enough for any gaming you wanted to do. Now, this is not the motherboard that I used in my enthusiast systems. It's actually a motherboard that I built into a media box, or what I might call a Netflix box now. It is the WinFast 6150K8MA 8EKRS. And you can see there isn't much manufacturer marking on it. Unless you like go to the back and almost literally read the fine print, foxconnchannel.com. This was a Foxconn made motherboard. And some of you might be thinking, well, who the heck is Foxconn? They're just the biggest motherboard manufacturer you've never heard of. Normally they're an OEM subcontractor. I'm not exactly sure what companies worked with them, but you know, if you had something like an Acer or an HP or a Dell or one of those big name system integrator PCs, well, they didn't make their own motherboards. They got a company like Foxconn to make the motherboard for them, and they just put their name on them. For Foxconn to come out of the closet and hit the consumer market, that was kind of like, what? So of course, I happened to have been on the market for a new media board at the time, and I saw that, and I had to have it. It was a curiosity. Also for that reason, it's one of the few socket 939 boards that I held on to. Word is, their quality was just as good as Asus. And for the most part, I was happy with this board. I don't know, maybe they didn't like doing customer support, and I had to use it. I went to update the BIOS on this thing one day, I can't remember why, and you know, the unthinkable happened. Something froze, lost power, something to that effect. My motherboard got bricked. So I had to contact them. They were a little snide with their response, kind of like, be careful next time, but they did, for free in the mail, chuck a replacement BIOS chip, which fortunately is socketed. So all I had to do was pop the old one out, pop the new one in. Back in the days, before AMD was making their own chipsets, ATi and NVIDIA was making chipsets for AMD. You gotta remember, they were the top dog at the time, so everybody wanted a bite of that pie. So it was good money for NVIDIA to make chipsets. AMD wasn't in the video card game yet, so they were partners, not competitors. This right here is a 6150. That 6150 on the box is the chipset that's on it. It's a variation of the Enforce 4 chipset to the best of my knowledge, but one that has your built-in video. And this board pretty much was full featured. It had everything. I wanted a board with built-on VGA, full processor support, full high-speed RAM support. It had DC fan speed control. We take that for granted today, but it was hit or miss whether a motherboard would have it back then. And of course, you got your usual fare, 2 IDs, 4 SATAs. Most boards would have at least 4 SATA back then. And the most amusing thing about it is it was one of the last boards that I was aware of, or the most modern board I have that would still support 2 floppy drives. Around this era and beyond, they would still have floppy support, but they would only allow you to mount 1 drive. And chances are, it would only be a 1.44 meg 3.5 inch. So what about hard drives? Well, back in those days, I was running a dual 74 gig Raptor RAID. They might have been the 8 meg cache drives. They would have been SATA 1 or SATA 150. I unfortunately only have one of those drives left, but I still do have 2 Western Digital Velociraptors, 150 gigs with 16 megs of cache, so I'm gonna use these in their place. On that note, this board features NVRAID, which, does NVRAID even work? I guess so. For some reason, even though it seems to set up fine in the configuration utility in BIOS, once I got into Windows, it would recognize the drives individually and not in a way that you can use. They would show up as kind of corrupt and you wouldn't be able to format them. Fortunately, I do have a substitute SATA RAID controller. This random Adaptec 2610. This came out of some Dell server or something, I don't know. A woman I was dating brought over a junk box of parts one day. I think it was her ex's, and this was in there. Lucky for me, it seems to work perfectly fine. Now, of course, I wasn't running stock cooling solutions. And I had one of the first AIOs on the market. The Cooler Master something, I forget the name of it. And for this, I have something equally as black as boxy. Oh, and it is a Cooler Master. Just this plain Cooler Master micro ATX case, which is kind of representative of some enthusiast cases at the time. Just black, but with a very plain internal interior. So this is pretty close to the kind of case you might have had it as an enthusiast back then. Also at the time, I had the first modular power supply to hit the market, the Antec Neo Power 480. It was pretty good, lasted me a while. In its place, the Antec True Power 2.0 makes a return because it's period correct and reasonably quiet. So it can represent what a good enthusiast power supply of the time was. So, I'm gonna go build on this. And here it is. You might not like it, but this is what peak performance looked like. Before you could put stuff in behind the motherboard tray, your hotspot was the spare 5 1/4 drive, where you bundled up and stuffed your surplus power supply cables. And yeah, it might look a bit nasty, but this was Kyle level cable management back then. If you could, inverting your hard drive array was a pro gamer move. You guys take for granted the fact that the ATX 12V connector's at the top back of the board now. Now that cooler isn't period correct. In fact, it's one of the first tower coolers on the market Cooler Master made. For a 92mm fan, it would come out around more the AM2 era. But it works nice in here, and as mentioned, I didn't use a stock cooler for this. It's such a plain Jane looking case by today's standards, but oh boy, that actually would have been considered pretty slick back then. So this case made a pretty period correct build. Any dirty secrets at the back? Well, not so much, because you couldn't really have the flexibility to tuck them back there. Sure, we got a few cables up here that, you know, bundled up, but at one point in time, you would actually run certain small cables behind the motherboard itself. Today we have only fans. Back then, we had fan only. Fan speed controllers, that was a thing, because if your motherboard had fan speed control on it, it was usually only for the CPU fan. So you needed to do something else for your case fans. Some of the Antec power supplies at the time had built-in fan speed controllers. Having speed-controlled fans in your power supply was a relatively newer concept, and they had the bright idea of adding this connection so you could tack a couple more fans onto that control. Even though your old one probably still worked, you might have swung a little bit extra for one of those newfangled SATA DVD burners. Oh, that was an interesting day in history when those things came out. What? I can run my DVD on SATA now? Oh, wow! No more ribbon cables, except for your floppy drive, which you still did have at least one of, and you used it for one purpose and one purpose only. So you could F6 third-party SCSI RAID drivers into your Windows XP install, because Windows XP did not support any of the SATA controllers at the time. If you wanted to run Raptor RAID or any SATA drive period and be able to boot off of it, you needed a floppy drive, because Windows XP also didn't support installing those drivers through CD or USB. I actually really like the way this build turned out in this case. Nice tight little package. There's just enough room for everything. It doesn't look too completely cluttered, but it doesn't look all empty and hollow. Thermally tuning it went well. The fan-only connector was just perfect for the front and rear fan. Everything synchronizes nicely, just enough airflow to keep those hard drives cool. And of course, the blower cooler on the video card means that heat, most of that heat gets pumped out of the case. And that was a big deal back then. Cases weren't quite designed the way they were today. One new feature we were starting to see was the intake on the side panel. Used to be side panels were completely enclosed, but then they had the bright idea of putting this extra port, usually with some sort of funnel assembly, so that the CPU could suck air directly from the outside. It would be a little while just yet before they started putting those nice clear side panels on things. They were just starting to come out around this time. All right, let's start off this party with a boot time test. Are you ready for this? And go. Nice noise from the start. Unfortunately, that X1900 XT has got quite an abrasive sound when it winds up. And the initialization of SATA RAID cards, specifically the off-board one, would add some overhead to our boot time. 1 minute in. Oh, welcome at 1 minute 18 seconds. And 1 minute 20 seconds, we have our start screen. But is it actually running? Is it actually ready? We're gonna call it 1 minute 30. That's okay. Now real quick to answer the question on everybody's mind. Best girl waifu, what do you say about that hard drive RAID speeds? We'll give it about 256 megs. Well, these are certainly not the numbers we were expecting from a dual Raptor RAID 0, but I guess it's gonna have to do. Still, it's probably faster than a straight SATA drive of the time. It's worth mentioning this is also when we started seeing lighting in computers. There were some aftermarket upgrades you could do to add lighting to your computer before this, but this is about when manufacturers started building it in, as is with that front 120mm fan. And unfortunately, it was the obnoxious blue. That seemed to be the cool thing to start with. Now, there were many hot ticket games at the time. One of the hot ticket games of this era that a lot of people were fiending over was F.E.A.R. And it was one of the first games that I can recall that had an in-game benchmark. Looks like a stormtrooper battle right here. I don't think anyone's actually hitting anything. Now, F.E.A.R, it actually had the pretty good graphics too. I'm not sure if it was one of those games that we would consider graphics card breaking like Crysis, but it was pretty up there. Everything's pretty much cranked except for the AA. 74% frames above 40 frames per second. Maximum 64. Maybe not the best results. Maybe not the best results. Let's see if it's playable. I have not pre-played this game, so this is going to be an experience you're joining me with. I played it back in the day, but it's been a while. Sierra of Half-Life and Monolith of Need for Speed. Very cinematic. Games were really taking that direction back then. This is just before gameplay was all about that online tournament repetitive garbage. Oh, so you're a zombie now, is that it?
Yes.
Sorry to wake you, Senator. It's about Origin.
What happened?
There was an uprising. F.E.A.R has taken command of the prototypes.
My God.
We can still resolve this discreetly, but we have to move fast.
Oh, all right. Let me make a few calls.
This wacko's name is Paxton F.E.A.R. He's the key. If we contain him, we contain the situation.
Fucker's got an appetite.
I think he has an agenda. It's not just recreational. He's getting something out of it.
Essential vitamins and nutrients?
What's his story?
Property of Armicam Technology Corporation. They're working on a military contract to develop an army of clones and respond to a psychic commander. Top secret, of course. F.E.A.R. is one of the commanders.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. This is why nobody takes us seriously. Military clones?
A full battalion of them. Highly trained and heavily armed.
A battalion? What are we supposed to do against 1,000 super soldiers?
Like I said, we put F.E.A.R. down and it's over. Fortunately, the whole point of the program is to give commanders first-hand knowledge of the battlefield without putting them in danger. That means we should be able to corner the bastard without having to wade through all those soldiers.
How do we find him?
Armicam had planted a transmitter in his head. Should lead us right to him.
That's awfully convenient.
Assuming it does what it's supposed to. What about you, buddy? Ready to go to work?
You're putting him in the field? Are you crazy? He just transferred in a week ago.
You've seen his training results. His reflexes are totally off the charts. I think he can handle himself.
Whatever, man. It's your call.
Goddamn right it is.
Don't worry. You'll be fine.
Let's roll.
Oh yeah, I'm remembering.
What's the first name you remember?
Where are you taking him?
You will be a god among men.
We've tracked F.E.A.R. to an abandoned building just up ahead. No sign of enemy activity on the satellite, but don't take any chances. Jankowski, you in position?
Just say the word.
All right, move it out.
I get a kick out of no matter how badass a super soldier you are at the beginning of a game, they always just start you off with a pistol. Oh! This feels weird. My mouse sensitivity is off the chart. It's running smooth except for the occasional hang-up. A lot of use of shadows in this game. Huh, this is the tutorial level, isn't it?
Hey, bro. What took you so long? Try to find a way around.
Seems to be when this is also when they started doing that bobble the screen thing. Not sure I was ever a fan of that. Wait. Oh, ha ha. Oh. A 3D shooter with jump scares.
Why did you bring me here? Why did you bring me back?
Hold on a sec.
Iron Sights is over there. That's dumb.
Come on. You ready? Go!
How come you get to have a gun and I don't?
You were born here, in this place. I was there.
Jin, we need you up here.
On my way.
Looks like we're too late, boss. Just leftovers.
The transmitter signal's coming from nearby. It's gotta be around there somewhere.
I'll wait here for Jin. You take a look around. Get going.
The city really shows its age. They look much more impressive these days. I remember what happens here.
The dead man's name was Charles Haberger. I remember him. But are the memories mine or hers? It makes no difference. He deserved to die. They all deserve to die.
Come in, over. What's going on? That lost Fennel signal. Comcast, this is Den Mother. I hope you aren't busy. We've got a situation down at the harbor. What kind of situation? We located those soldiers you were looking for, but we're under orders not to repair until you guys reconnoiter. Understood. I've got 2 birds en route to your position. You should have a visual shortly. We'll be ready.
What do you think of the new point, man? Hey, back already? See anything?
You guys about done up there? Our day's just getting started.
You boys run along. I'll be busy here for a while.
I've tried to forget,
tried so hard to forget.
These men are from F.E.A.R. They're special attachments to our unit for the duration of this op. They will be on point. Their mission is to assess the nature of the threat. Our job is to keep them alive. Do not engage the enemy. Remember that we are not dealing with ordinary bad guys. Team 1 will move in from the southwest. Team 2 will approach from the north. Once our recon is complete, we'll rendezvous and wait for further orders. Okay, let's saddle up.
Halford cargo.
Don't fuck shit up!
Dead Mother, this is Little Bird.
Oh, they gave me a gun this time.
Proceed to first objective.
Since you're on point, see if you can get this kid over.
Ah, they didn't start doing iron sights yet. Look at this.
Specialist for this one.
Uh-oh.
Good job. Head on back. The hell is that? Over there! Yeah! Motherboard, what's your situation? Motherboard, I'm losing your signal. If you can hear me, rendezvous with you.
Uh-oh. Oh. Now they start showing us the little girl. Are these bad guys? They're not very aware, are they? Oh, okay. So the shtick with this is it's not a horror survival. It's just a 3D shooter with jump scares.
All elements be advised that Echo Zero... Hostile!
What the hell? I've been cornered! I've been cornered! And I think I'm dropping flames.
Take him out! Target sighted!
Oh, this guy's like flying around and stuff. I'm not doing well in the ammo department. It's not as fast moving a game. Oh yeah?
This is Echo 6. We've reached the first marker. Roger, Echo 6. Have been confirmed.
Oh. Ah, they have gun shake. That's what's going on here. Alright, here we go. Seems this is one of those games where it takes an entire clip of ammo to take down one guy, but then one guy doesn't even give you a clip back. I may have used cheat codes with this game.
In here. Check the upper floor. Yes, sir.
Well, looks like we're going down here. Oh, new guns. Nice. Motor Master. Well then. I can't, like, see them when dust kicks up. That was new back then. You know what I'm forgetting? This is not a game you play normally. This is not a game you play normally. There's a slow mode. There's a bullet time. There we go. Now the gameplay's starting to make more sense to me. Nope. Oh yeah. Who's this guy?
Someone.
Alright, let's just follow Buddy here. More vaporized corpses. Apparently that's what this little girl likes to do to people.
Is someone there?
Yes, me. Oh. Hello. How are you, little girl? Would you like to play? Oh, wait. I'm not supposed to let her touch me. Oh, well, I think we got the point. This video's gonna run long if I keep playing this.